Welcome, Stuart Berryhill, to the Life, Legacy, and Leadership Podcast, the Brookhill Podcast. Stuart Berryhill is our guest today. Stuart, Legacy Counselor, Walker, Senior Counselor. It has to be the number 2 best bunkhouse on Guys Hill. Sits right next to the Mustangs. Stuart, you were a counselor from. Give me your years, your camper years. Find out what counselors you had in it.
Brookhill history for me was, I guess it was either 2000 or 2001 that I started coming to camp. My parents were both counselors, so that's how we got into Brookhill. And then basically 3rd grade all the way until last summer, which I'm now 30, I'd been at Brookhill. So 7 years camper, 3 years JC, 5 years senior counselor, and then the rest on the admin team for a little bit. So that was kind of the history there, and all 5 of the senior counselor summers in the best bunkhouse, the Walker bunkhouse. Won the most guys' night championships, had the most studs, less, peas in the bed at night. The Mustangs aren't always that way. So definitely take the... sun rises and sets over the Walker bunkhouse. So
I see.
Obviously, it's the
30
best.
feet away, it doesn't do that.
No, not at all.
I love it. What was your last year in the bunkhouse? What was that? Do you remember what year that was?
I think it was 2015.
2015. So you did 6 or 7 summers as the recruiter or kind of assistant camp director, kind of morphing into the staff recruiter.
Yeah.
I think once we got that direction going, that was a much better direction.
Yeah. Basically, I had graduated from U of A. You brought me to CMA, got some teaching. I was going to be a teacher, and I actually graduated in December, so needed a job in January, which came to CMA, and then that worked out with, teaching during the school year, summers at Brookhill. So that those first couple of years, it was assistant camp director or whatever it was, and then we started to figure out niches or roles for everybody, which was probably one of the best things you did right there, because that just helped tremendously with all sorts of different areas getting better. Specifically, I was basically in charge of the JCs and the JCT campers, as you said, the staff recruiter, so trying to bring more people in as JCs, more people in as all summer, so we could really choose from the best.
Yeah, and we went from, we were getting 130, 140 JCs to this last summer. What did we get that number up to?
Oh, we were over 300. So I think the first summer, I can't remember what it was. It was under 150 total. And it was like only 30-something guys, 40-something guys.
Right.
And I was always trying to push for more and more guys because girls, I guess, got more free time in the summer or something.
Yeah.
And so each year that just kind of kept going up. I think the first year we did it, where I was full-time staff recruiter that summer, spending the weekends, hanging out with JCs, basically I wasn't, I'd hang out with campers, but really my campers were the junior counselors. Hanging out with them after that summer, kind of the fruit of that, we were up over, I think, 220 after the first summer really kind of doing that. And then the second summer we hit 300, and I think this summer it's over 300 again. So, that just, one, I always liked being staff recruiter because I always told the JCs that when I was a JC, that is kind of the week that changed the trajectory of my life. So I give that week a lot of importance and value, and so I always wanted them just to have the same experience. And so we were able to do that, I guess, and they all like it because they keep coming back. And so really excited that keeps on growing and also leads to more and more all-summer applications as well.
I agree. I just think, the numbers were always there. We had this, we really had about the same amount of graduates. Mm-hmm. We really had, it wasn't that we went out and found these more counselors. It was just really spending time with the ones we had and saying, hey, you really ought to think about this. And you really, especially for our guys, to get a vision for that. And they love it, But before, like you said, we had 30 JC guys and they were, doing 6 weeks, during the summer because, hey, we need you back.
3 go-karts each week.
That's right. Hey, we need you back. And so I know that the guys certainly appreciate that, having some more teammates. And like you said, we had you go in the staff recruiter spot, and we had T. Finch go into the media spot, which kind of led to all of this. Before we kick into what Stuart's doing now and kind of get into some of this and get into the stories, do we want to see how good Stuart is with the game?
Uh-oh.
All right, Stuart. This is the game, and Stuart's competitive. So, Jason Ross did pretty good. Who is our official leader right now? Callan. Do you know what his number is? You'll have it up by the time the podcast drops.
Whatever it is, I can beat it.
Whatever it is. Okay. So here is the rules of the game. Tyler is going to put 30 seconds on the clock. It's a Brookhill game because this is the Brookhill podcast. You're a major Brookhill guy, so you should be able to. That is the scoreboard. That is the scoreboard.
Okay.
So Tyler's going to throw the timer up there. The timer is 30 seconds, and 30 seconds will begin whenever I finish. Telling you the rules. You have 3 different Brookhill categories, and the name of the game is to name as many Brookhill things in these categories. Okay? The categories are activities, camp songs, and cabins. So it's 3 massive categories. Name as many of those as you can in 30 seconds. Go.
Walkers, Mustangs, Morgans, Pacers, Broncos, Mavericks, Buckskins, Appaloosas, Hackneys, Lipizans, Pintos, Thoroughbreds, Palominos, Galicinos, Chestnuts, Bays, Tennis, Boy Sports, sports, wakeboarding, what else? Go-karts, horseback, riflery, archery, not bumper boats. I wanted to say bumper boats.
Well, you could even throw in the old ones. That's all right. What did you get to?
I think 24.
24. What's Callan?
27.
Oh.
I was trying to. So if you had done this with me the week after I had done camp, then I would have nailed that because I was doing cabin cleanup every day, checking the cabin, so I could literally.
That's right.
Go around like that, but took a second to try and remember those.
Yeah, Jason Ross was really good, too, when he was on the show because he'd literally just been hiring the staff and telling them what bunkhouses to go into.
Yeah.
So he was really good. Jason unofficially is like in 3rd place because he was given the 20-second timer. Then we had a rules change to 30 seconds. So he has an asterisk by his name. He needs to be able to.
What was the third? You had activities, bunkhouses, what
camp songs.
Camp songs, okay.
Which is a whole bunch, which
I forgot the third activity.
You know a bunch of those. So we're working on our game. It's kind of a new game that'll be more. All right, so you went to camp. You loved Brookhill. Who was the era of the counselors that you had?
So my first senior counselor was Mark Patty, Hackney's 3rd grade camper. From that summer, I don't know why, the main thing I remember is the Mountain of Goodness on Friday night, bunkhouse party, and having to give all my food away. That's the main thing. That's the main thing I remember. And then after that, 4th grade was Bill and the Appaloosas. 5th grade, Brooks and the Walkers, and then had Bill again. So that generation was really there for a long time. The Mitchell Glass, the Bill, Keith DeSaulnier, Brooks, those guys were really the core group. Tim Barton, and always looked up to all those guys kind of growing up. That 3rd through 7th grade, you just think those guys are awesome. That is like your heroes. And then 8th and 9th grade, you're like, oh, these guys are cool. And I had Adam and who was the year before that? Oh, Jared Kilpatrick, guys like that. And so a lot of really cool guys that I got to be in their bunkhouses. But that first core group from the 2000 to 2003 and 4 time frame was really the one that kind of kickstarted the Brookhill career, so to speak.
What do you think you love so much? What drew you back? I mean, obviously you said your mom and dad were counselors, which that's really cool. I mean, that's legacy in and of itself. And what stood out to you at camp? What drew you to camp? As a guy, I know we set out to really work on our guy-girl ratio because for a while Brookhill had just started growing on the girls' side, which now it's growing equally at an equally fast rate on the guys' side. I know we worked on wakeboarding and laser tag and some of those things to bring our guys in. But what do you think? What drew you back year after year? What'd you love? What'd you love about camp?
So for me, it was just kind of like a home away from home. Is really the best way I would describe it. It always felt comfortable coming back. Because what's interesting for me is I'm not like an extrovert person. I'm actually a pretty introverted person, but for some reason, Brookhill just had this home type of feeling. And each year coming back, it always delivered on that. And I did always come with a bunch of buddies. My first summer, I had a buddy I came with. And then I went to Little Rock Christian Academy growing up. We started bringing more and more people there. So we just like massively populated week 3 with Little Rock Christian people. So 8th and 9th grade, we just dominated all 3 ping pong tables. We would cut in line, get our limeades, and then go, hey, 3rd grader, yeah, I'll play for the table. And then we took over the tables and just did that all canteen because we had no hub, we had no nothing.
Right.
So we just dominated ping pong tables. So I had a bunch of buddies that came back each year, and but the main reason I would keep coming back was just the home feeling that it provided.
The counselors connecting with you and just kind of doing that sort of thing, and even being from Little Rock, it still feels like a summer camp away from home. It's just an hour away, but it still felt like that for you. What do you think made you come back? As a counselor, you were a 3-year JC, weren't an AC. And then, gosh, you were in the cabin, you said 5 years. What made you keep coming back? Obviously you're in college, but what was the legacy for you, of being in that red t-shirt?
Well, the first summer, like I said, is I really, learned how to switch a mindset from being a taker to a giver, from being a junior counselor. I mean, I remember my first week, it was week 1. So first of all, as a JC, you don't realize how chaotic week 1 is in general. And so then it was week 1 for me. So I learned that as a JC, because like that first Tuesday, I remember Big Lake, all the boats were out. I had done go-karts probably my 3rd of the day or something like that. So it was like 4th activity. And we go pick up Big Lake, all the boats are at the lake. So all I hear from the person at the wagon is like, JC's, go. And so like some 3rd year leads the charge. And so we're all like stripping as we go into the big lake and, taking off our shirts and getting into the boats and things like that. And, immediately get back for canteen. And I remember all the ice cream had melted. And so Steven Sexton was like, hey, Stuart, I got a job for you. I was like, okay. Count all the ice cream, like all the little packets that we had lost. So I guess they could figure out how much lost revenue there was. So at canteen, I'm just wet, I'm sticky, can't get a shower at rest time, but for some reason, I enjoyed it. I liked it. And hanging out with kids. And I was by no means a great first-year JC. I mean, being a JC alone was a big step out for me because, like I said, I was an introverted person. But something about just giving to others kept me coming back. And obviously talk about the legacy that others had left for, kind of us to follow. So I enjoyed it, stuck with it, made friends while doing it, and then just I had nothing else to do in the summer, so kept coming back. And the more I did it, the better I got at it. And the more, like I always described to JCs, or even all summer. Actually, this is what I would say to all summer. When you become all summer, your first year, if you're a one and done, no one remembers you. Thank you for your service. You helped further the kingdom, but no one really remembers you. Second summer, they start to remember you. Third summer, you're really just getting to water what you've already planted, and you start to have deep connections with kids. I mean, you don't need to see name tags anymore. So your 3rd, 4th, and 5th summer, kids are asking to be in your bunkhouse. Kids are wanting to be around you, and you don't even have to. I mean, you're just there. And so, kind of just being able to be consistent, just I guess brought a draw for kids to come hang out with me because consistency is definitely something that they can lack when they're at home or at youth groups or whatever it is. But yeah, just to answer your question, what kept me coming back was really just wanting to provide that home to other people, letting them learn from my story, and just kind of that giving back. And it was also fun. Like, I mean, you're not going to come back, yeah, go do stuff that furthers the kingdom and you don't enjoy. Well, that's not a calling necessarily if you don't enjoy it.
Right.
I enjoyed it. So that was part of my calling. And it, gave me back tremendous amount of friends, connections, experiences, and memories.
Well, each year that you came back, you were, like you said, you were building something.
Mm-hmm.
And, at that point in your life, in my life, hadn't really built anything. You're 16, 17, 18. Never really, yes, sports teams, right? That's probably the closest thing up to that point in your life where you actually were a part of something bigger than you. And year in and year out, you were building towards something. But to me, camp was even bigger than any sports team I'd been on. I know both you and I had been on sports teams. And I think of the Craig Groeschel quote of successful leaders do things consistently, whereas other people do things occasionally. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you came back year in and year out, you built something, and I think there's something to say about that. And to go back to the guy aspect of it, at that point in my life as a guy, I know sometimes boys get bad raps of, hey, girls are a little more motivated, or girls are a little more. I don't know, girls maybe relationally jump into things a little easier, but when a guy gets challenged, and I think that's what you got at camp. Hey, go out there and go get those boats. Dude, that's kind of cool, to go jump. I'm going to go jump in a lake, go grab a bunch of boats. I don't know, as a JC guy's kind of cool. I think, go get, you were given this responsibility, and you were given these challenges, and I think, there was something in you, there was something in me that I wanted to rise to that occasion. I think about this last summer, Jason and I grabbed the JC guys, and we dug a ditch. We literally dug a ditch before it rained because we were getting some runoff by one of our new buildings, and the water was starting to seep in a little bit. We had to kind of fix that a little bit. And more guys have written in because of that moment.
That's funny.
And there's just something about that challenge. And I think Tyler would agree, just at that point in my life, I had never had anybody really challenge me. Would you say that I don't know, maybe that was something that resonated in you?
Yeah. Like you said, I had the sports teams growing up that I was on in high school. But in high school, I wouldn't say I was hardcore plugged into a youth group. I was going to church, going to youth group, but it's easy to not, to be on the outskirts and not be seen, so to speak. And same with the bigger high school. So there was never someone outside of the parents that were challenging me. And so when you get to be a part of that, for sure, as a JC or an all summer staff, from some cool guy like, yourself, Ty, Jason, whatever it is, one, they just love spending that time with you. It doesn't matter what the job is.
Right.
And you can ask them to do anything. A lot of guys are already willing because they're putting the red T-shirt on. And so, you have that little bit of extra motivation. But definitely challenging guys, especially competitive guys like you and I are, definitely bring something out of them that they may not have known was there. And that's something I always, Stephen Sexton, who was the camp director when I was growing up, that's one of my greatest mentors, and he was always so good at seeing the positive before the lack in somebody else. And so you almost feel like someone is seeing that inside of you when they are challenging you. And when that happens for you, it helps you kind of uncover some things about yourself that you didn't even know you could do or you enjoyed doing. And so I definitely think that challenging the JC guys, whatever it is, or guys in general, young people, helps them be motivated, because everybody has a trigger to be motivated.
Right.
No one wants to go through life and do nothing. They just haven't figured it out or figured out their trigger point yet. And so it's not young people's fault. It's the leadership's fault. And, we blame young people way too much. But what do you see a lot of parents do? Hey, be on your phone, and, that doesn't bother us, whatever it is, and they're not challenging something outside of that, and they're just allowing somebody to exist and not, bringing them to go do some sort of work to help people or help at the house or whatever it may be. And so I definitely think that's a good point.
Yeah, I think that's kind of Hetty 101 to take people to the next level. I don't know if you had a chance to see Hetty's podcast. We had hers a couple of podcasts ago, and she just it's so funny talking with her. We're trying to, you and I, Ty, our team has always been trying to write down and kind of capture the vision of Brookhill. But she was Brookhill.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, why did Hetty do that? She did that just because that's who she was.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're doing is carrying on that vision and calling people to a higher level. That's what she did. I mean, she created this system to where young people have a place to grow, to thrive, to serve, to do. And, that's just something that I'm seeing, that these soft skills, these ways for people to develop leadership, thinking skills, work ethic. I mean, where's the mechanism to do that outside of sports?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I've been a sports fan. And people kind of give sports a bad rap. Oh, well, let's do other things. Okay, but what are these other things that create these soft skills? Because schools don't necessarily built in create these. And I love that Brookhill did that, and does that.
Yeah, and even to add to another thing that I love that is unique about there's a few things that are unique about Brookhill, and obviously we're Brookhill fanatics, compared to other summer camps, and I don't hate on other summer camps at all. I love all summer camps. But something that makes Brookhill unique, one is the staff that we don't go to colleges and hire staff.
Sure.
That's always something that's definitely super unique, and I
Sure.
think the staff recruiter role and the lead counselors that we now have help continue that and make that better than it's ever been. But then also, the other thing that always, I think, set Brookhill apart was it was never about the activities. It was about kids being able to see Jesus inside of counselors.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my favorite stories to tell any counselors when I was doing any training session was about Philip Lee, who was a counselor with me when me and Ty and Jason were senior counselors, and he taught bumper boats. Well, very often the bumper boats would not work. On Tuesday, we tried, didn't work. But even with bumper boats not working, you would still have kids switching into his activity. It's like, why are kids switching into a bumper boats activity where they know? Like, Philip's not selling that bumper boats are the best in the world or anything like that. He's saying, come be with me. And that alone was a draw for kids, which in reality is exactly what Jesus did when he said, come be with me.
Right. And
so that's something that I think Brookhill is so unique with. And obviously we need to have cool activities. We need to have, wakeboarding, all those things that can bring the draw. But as soon as we come people on sidelines just watching wakeboarding happen rather than the cheerleader, whatever it is at wakeboarding, that's almost just as entertaining as the activity itself. To me, that's when Brookhill starts losing its uniqueness, its value. And so that's always one of the things that I challenge the counselors with is when the activities start being the reason that people come back to Brookhill, Brookhill will have lost its uniqueness.
Mm-hmm.
Brookhill, people should always be coming back to Brookhill because of the counselors. And it's not because the counselor, it's just because they can see Jesus inside of them. They got someone cheering them on, someone who's consistent, someone who's in their corner, someone who's got life that they haven't seen before. That there's social media saturated. And so seeing someone that just has life without a phone around them is something different. And I think that's a big draw that I really think makes Brookhill unique.
And I think there's really two things there. Number one, I think it's the fact that the counselors that they see are genuinely themselves. Mm-hmm. They're not trying to be, you were Stuart Berryhill. And what is Stuart Berryhill? It's just the unique guy that God created you to be. And you were confident in that. I think when you know who you are in the Lord and you just trust that being yourself is enough, I think that's when we actually are more effective than when we try and copy or imitate somebody else. So I think that's that first element of either us recruiting or finding staff members or seeing staff members grow into just being confident in who God has made them to be, and then just be yourself.
Uh-huh.
And then I think the second element of that is learning how to be good with kids, right? And I don't know about you. I don't feel like I was naturally good at, getting outside of myself, if that makes sense. Maybe
Right.
I think naturally I'm a little more chill, and I know you are
Right.
naturally a little more chill. But I think it's a learned behavior. I think you can learn how to entertain a crowd. I think you can flip a switch, right?
Yeah.
And-
100%.
And I've seen you do that up in front of crowds.
Yes. Because, I remember my first JC summer being so nervous to talk with a kid that you didn't know. And then even first all summer year, it's a lot of learning. Like you're not that good yet. Some people are definitely more natural, like you said. But I think
Like Philip Lee. Philip Lee's
Yeah.
a great Steve Sexton, Philip Lee.
But even
Joy
Philip Lee,
Metz.
Philip Lee came to camp when he was ninth grade, got saved, was super introverted, and
Yeah,
then
it's true.
became extroverted over time. And definitely there's a learning pattern that can happen, and you get better and better because, like you said, you were saying you got to be yourself, which is 100% true. But I think people limit themselves, and sometimes they get challenged
Right.
to go to another level here and there, and they say, oh, that's not who I am. But it can be. So for me, if you would have told me I would have been leading morning devotions and counseling, like that requires goofiness. It requires extrovertedness. I don't know. Like you have to be entertaining. You are leading a crowd, and you can lose 300 kids and counselors very quickly if you're not good, if you're not entertaining, because it's a kids camp. Like your job is to be fun. It is to be entertaining. And so while I may have started chill first summer, it grew out because I was being challenged and because I accepted the challenge. I didn't just say, this is who I am, I'm just going to be chill. I learned how to be more entertaining when I needed to be, more fun, whatever it was, because my fourth and fifth summer, I was the morning Devo leader, and that always, every single morning, required me getting outside of myself. But when I was a morning Devo leader, I wasn't trying to be Philip Lee.
That's
I wasn't
right.
trying to be Brooks Hummel. I did it my way, which worked. But
It almost sounds, but those two ideas almost sound opposed to each other.
right.
Be yourself, but then learn these leadership extrovert principles.
Yeah, they clash a little bit, but I think that's you're not growing unless you're uncomfortable.
That's right.
And so,
That's good.
What do they say? It's probably Craig Rochelle that says it. Growth is just a step outside your comfort zone. And so once you start to learn to do that, whether it's public speaking, whatever it is, then you really start to grow, because you're not like, yes, you are a certain type on an Enneagram, you are a certain type on whatever personality test, but that doesn't mean you can't add to whatever box. Like you can be a full person. Now, if you see me at the house, I'm going to most often be chill.
You're not leading counseling at your
no,
house.
I'm not. I'm going to most often be chill.
Sure.
But
That's right.
there
Same.
are times where I do bring that side out of me, or if it's needed or whatever it is. But yeah, Brookhill, being on all summer staff, just called those things out of you that you didn't know you had. And it just adds so many leadership skills, just all sorts of skills in general, from being challenged to do things you would never normally do.
And I think sometimes we dance away. Oh, I don't want to frustrate them, or I don't want to say that, or I don't want to do that. I think as leaders, we would hinder people if we don't challenge them. And obviously there's a right way to do that, and those are the kind of skills that people are learning here. But I do think it is in all of us for God to use people to call us to a higher level. I mean, when you read the Bible, that is exactly what God does is he's challenging everybody. You know, those different stories, different people, he's challenging them to a higher level, you know, and that's essentially what happened to us here, and then what we turned around and then challenge other people. I think that's the legacy of the red T-shirt.
Yeah, and while you're being challenged, you often hate it or don't like the leader even at that moment. And then you start to grow up more or less, or become, you start to learn that level of yourself as possible. And then you're so appreciative of that leadership. And if you don't have a leader that is challenging you, then you're not being led, because all you're doing is being yourself and being in your comfort zone. But until you are getting out of your comfort zone, then you're not being led. And so that's one thing that Brookhill admin team, I feel like, always did a good job of, whether it's through staff meetings or one-on-one talks, whatever it is we were always almost frustratingly challenging them to go to another level.
Sure.
But that's leadership, and
right.
That's the clash, and obviously you got to tell them that they're awesome and doing great overall, but there is something that you can always be doing better. There's always another level, like you said earlier.
But when you sign up for a team, you kind of understand that's the coach's job. And of course, signing up for the Brookhill team all summer, you understood the coach. And do you have any Steve stories? Can you think of any times where he challenged you, maybe where you weren't giving of yourself, and maybe it's kind of a funny story where he might have, I don't know if you can recall any, I didn't ask you to, but.
Oh, no, there's plenty.
Okay.
And yeah, there's
maybe
almost
on the drums or you were leading.
First summer, there was one, I struggled with being late, and so there's definitely a lot of challenges there. But we won't go into those because that's not necessarily, that's a different type of challenge. I got to get better. But one time he did a drum competition against me. We did a drum solo against each other. Steven did, and he won for he was not good.
Right.
The kids just
it's just the
knew
kids.
him.
Right. He was entertaining. He was more entertaining.
He was more entertaining. And the penalty for that was that at breakfast or dinner or whatever it was, I had to be on all fours dressed as a moose or something like that. I don't even know why a moose. It was something weird. But it's things like that get you way out of your comfort zone. Yeah. that just grow you. It's
right.
Weird things like that can grow you. Or maybe it's teaching an activity you've never taught before,
right?
And you never trained in it.
Right.
Those were things where it would grow you. Or maybe it was just a challenging camper,
sure,
1 week, or challenging junior counselors, and you're like, how do I lead them? Those were things that always grew you, that were uncomfortable at that time, but really helped shape a better person, a better leader overall.
I always like to say, if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. That's definitely a Craig Rochelle. It has to be. If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. I know we get frustrated the most at difficult moments, but yet when you look back, they're always the things that catapulted us the fastest to the next level. I know 2020 was like that for us here at Brookhill. We've never grown so much in a single year if it wasn't for the frustration of 2020. It's just weird. And obviously you can't live in a challenge 365. You couldn't handle that. That's too much. Mm-hmm. But those moments I think are so important. And I love Jocko Willink, and I'm sure you're a Jocko fan. He always used to tell his team good whenever something bad happens. He's like, this got canceled. He's like, good. More time to get better. I don't know if have you seen that motivational video? I love it. His response was always good. When something bad happened, he was like, good. And he's got that voice. Good.
Well, I don't know if you saw the Villanova basketball team. Every time a foul was called, their team would start clapping, and they would get in a circle. And it wasn't like a sarcastic clap. Like at first I was like, why are you clapping, Colin Gillespie? Villanova, you just got called for a foul. That was kind of bogus.
Yeah.
But they all start clapping, get in a circle, talk about it, and it wasn't ever at the refs or so. It's kind of that same concept you're talking about. And in the same vein, I think it's important if you are receiving leadership. Maybe you should always be in a leadership sandwich, so to speak. You should be leading someone and being led.
Great,
but
love that.
If you are being led, like we were both basketball coaches, I always had to have the conversation with players that with correction, I'm never attacking your identity. I'm attacking your performance.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the quicker people can start to make that distinction,
Mm-hmm.
because we're very perfectionistic as a generation,
Mm-hmm.
and young people very perfectionistic because of what they see on social media. And so someone corrects them, they think of that as an attack on their identity. It wasn't that at all. It's an attack on your performance trying to make you better. And so the quicker you can make that distinction, just the better of a leader you're going to be, if you can recognize that. So if you're a player on a basketball team, your coach, now there's some angry coaches out there, but for most of the coaches out there, they're not trying to yell at you and attack you as a person or whatever it is. They're trying to help the team win.
And so, make you better. Because as you get better, right, the team wins.
Right. And so that's a distinction I think a lot of people struggle with making. But when they hear, oh, okay, my identity's not being attacked, Stuart doesn't hate me, whatever it is, it's just literally, I hate saying the word attack, but an attack or correction on their performance, then, you start to go to another level. Because, like I said, you should always be being coached. Otherwise, I mean, your muscles only do two things. They can either be growing, but in order to grow, they have to be broken down, or they have atrophy. You can't, there's nowhere in the middle. And so with that growth and being constantly broken down, you just have to recognize that is happening, and that is a good thing.
It's funny, we can see that in the physical, right? We understand that with weights and whatever, that in order to grow a muscle, you actually have to tear that muscle down. We understand that, and I guess our brains just don't make that connection that, God did that in every area. Whether it's spiritual or whatever, there has to be some breaking down in order for there to be growth in the spiritual, in the emotional. You have to experience difficult times in order for your emotions to get stronger. But I think that's a great thing to address. I like how you said, I'm not sure how you said that, but we do take things more personal today. It seems like as a leader, I don't know, and maybe all generations think this. Maybe that's exactly the way it is. But it just feels like back when I was being coached, I don't remember my coaches at all. I don't ever remember them hurting my feelings. I don't even remember them talking to me. But I know they did. But it was just like whatever they said, I tried to get better, and I went out and did my job. And maybe not. Maybe it's just because it's been so long I've forgotten. But it just does seem like things are taken a little more personal today. Do you see that?
Yeah, and the main thing I would attribute that towards is social media. I'm not a social media hater. I see good within social media, but there's plenty of bad that comes from it, because what do you do on social media? You only post your best,
right,
for the most part. What do you like from other people on social media? Generally only their best, and so you're only seeing a perfectionistic side of things, and so that kind of trains you to think you have to be perfect on the first try. And like anyone who comes in, let's say as a junior counselor, their first week, they are going to mess up. Like, it is inevitable. There's no way that you are going to be perfect.
No.
And so, but it's almost like people don't recognize that.
Right.
And a lot of people want to come in and do really, really good. And they always do, but there is still always another level that you can go to. And so I do think social media is part of it, where people, just think they have to be perfect at first time. And so then when they get correction, and I do think there's less leadership nowadays. So when they do get led, that they don't recognize it as being led. They just think someone's attacking them.
That's what I wondered. I wondered if we go back to this muscle concept, is it that we just haven't been challenged enough, right? Is it, that because I do feel like those who have been on teams and have been kind of frustrated already by a coach or whatever do tend to take it a little easier. I just wonder, have we not had those challenges? Are we seeing more and more people that have had less and less challenging? Or I don't know if challenging is the word, just required out of them, right? Like you can do that. Have things been done for them instead of required out of them is just, I don't know.
Yeah,
Just
well, I
get your
definitely
thoughts on
think
that.
people, I think people, especially with young people, let them sit where they're at, like we were talking about earlier, and don't challenge them to go to another level. I do think there's a struggle with leadership nowadays on both sides, from being led to leading. I look at a lot of stuff from when I watch coaches.
Right.
It's like, that ain't going to work for you as a coach. I don't care who you're coaching and what you told their mama.
Right.
Like,
Right.
you can't talk that way. You can't do that. You can't, that is demeaning the way you did that.
Right.
And so now hopefully there's background one-on-one talks that we didn't see.
That's right.
But I definitely see, you can see it in the government. Just lack of leadership. It doesn't matter which party.
That's right.
One party can be struggle with leadership, and one party can be way overbearing. And it is definitely overall a struggle that we see kind of on both sides of it. So I think there's multiple things that kind of go into that question.
Which is why we've started this leadership weekend that we have this weekend, which you're going to be speaking at. Super excited about that. But I just think there's a lack of leadership. And you see it everywhere. And when there's a lack of something, supply and demand, leaders are going to be in high demand. And so I think we have to do that. I do want to hit the one thing you said. I liked it, and I thought of something. You said we always need to be in a leadership sandwich. And I thought of something, and I think it's the fact that if people aren't, if you don't have anybody pouring into you and you try and pour out, you're empty. I think you have to have people pouring into you so that then you can turn around. If we have this cup example here, this is like a full-on illustration. You have to have people pouring into you if you're going to be able to pour into other people. But then once you empty out, you have, and I think you have to be mentored and you have to be mentoring. I think that was a really great point. I didn't want to let that go. So I thought that was a really good point.
Yeah.
You want to elaborate on
that? And even Jesus did that. He was in a leadership setting. So he was always hearing from the Father, and he was, but obviously he was also pouring out plenty. So leadership sandwich, I definitely think is super important. And it's not even a leadership sandwich in one area. You have to have it in different areas.
Right.
You should have, if you want to be a good basketball player, you need to have obviously a coach. But if you really want to grow too, you should start taking someone under your wing, showing them plays, showing them, I don't know, how to footwork or fundamentals, and you'll become a better basketball player from both of those things being combined. If you want to become better with money, if you want to become better with a leader, you need those sandwiches in every single category, and not just, maybe it's spiritual, but if you want to practically be better at something too, you need to go get a sandwich in that practical leadership sandwich, so to speak. It can't just be spiritual. You got to add the practical side of it too.
And I definitely think mentors, like physical people being mentors in your life, are important. But I also think, how great of a world we live in that we have podcasts today that we can literally have anybody speak into our life. Hey, I want to know what they think. I want to know. They have a podcast usually, right? Or they wrote a book or whatever. There's so much out. I believe there's so many resources out there today, and I wonder, do we even take advantage?
Well, yeah, and I'll be challenging that a little bit with what I'm talking about, because to me, and Ben Carson has said it before, if you were born in America and are a Christian, you have struck the lottery. And I'll add to that, if you have a phone, you can do anything. You can do anything you want to do with YouTube University or Apple Podcast University. You can learn and grow into whatever you want to become. And so, it is something that 20 years ago, you could only be in one area because it was hard to learn something else. YouTube wasn't as much a thing, or podcasts or whatever. You would have to read a lot of books. You would have to be around the right people. And so definitely nowadays it is easier to grow in whatever area you want to. than it has ever been.
Well,
And-
you can grow right now. Like this thing is broken. I don't know how to make it work. I can YouTube that.
right.
I mean, I don't know that people understand the value of what they have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I know that people always get on to me because if someone asks a question, I'm going to Google it. I am going to look that up because I want to know right now. How does that work? What is that? And I think sometimes we just accept not knowing how to do stuff, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big podcast listen guy. Like every morning I work out, and every morning I listen to at least 2, generally 3 podcasts on 2 times speed.
Okay.
And so I'm constantly just getting something new that I am learning every single day. I just don't want to be static. So whatever I'm wanting to grow in, so whether it's leadership or something I'm wanting to learn financially, whatever it is, I am constantly. I mean, it's not hard to find what I want to learn either.
Right.
Like you're saying, you can just Google it. You can go to YouTube, and there's really a lot of good teachers out there on those platforms, and so you don't have to pay X amount of dollars to learn how to, I don't know, flip a house. You can learn that over a couple months through YouTube. And be able to do it yourself.
So what do you do? How long each day do you say you're listening to an audiobook or a podcast or, for me, I play the Bible sometimes. What?
Yeah. So
I feel like I'm getting 2 hours a day. Like whether I'm working out or driving to Little Rock to play tennis or driving back, I feel like I'm getting anywhere. I'm usually 2 hours a day.
Yeah. For me, I don't listen to. Unless I'm with friends, I don't listen to music. It is all podcasts. Now I don't have super long commutes and I work from home. And then at the gym, it's always podcasts.
That's right. The gym, working out. Yeah.
So just from that, it's generally an hour, probably to an hour and a half each day. But then I do a lot of network meetups. And so I'm into real estate. And so I'll do a lot of virtual meetups. And because you've probably heard this before, but it's almost the quote I live by: your network is your net worth. And so that is the best way to learn, being around people doing what you want to do.
100%.
And so to me, that's even better learning than going and listening to a podcast, because one, you're hearing from success and failure, but then you're gaining a buddy.
That's right.
And you can start to ask them whatever question you want, and they can help you along the way. And so for network, I'm probably at 3 to 4 of those a week, and that is an hour. Generally, we do hour meetups. Maybe it's a lunch, or maybe it's in the evening, or whatever it is. Today's Friday, so Wednesday night it was 7:00, and I was in a underwriting meetup for an hour and a half, and
Wow.
so
learning about underwriting.
yeah, but it's also stuff I like to learn about.
That's right.
I don't force feed my stuff. Like, it's not boring. Like,
Right.
I enjoy doing it because I
Which
think
for most people, if we were doing an underwriting meetup, we'd be like,
sure.
What?
Yeah, sure.
But for you, that's what you do.
Yeah, and so
what
I
you
mean,
get into.
when I was coaching basketball, it was constant basketball stuff. I was
Right.
constantly listening to podcasts or reading books or watching basketball or whatever it may be. So people, listening, I mean, I think they hear, oh, you're always studying, whatever, that sounds boring, but it's also stuff we're interested in.
100%.
You're probably listening to leadership stuff.
Yes.
Obviously, just feeding yourself spiritually.
Right.
Maybe it's a podcast from another church or whatever it is, but it's stuff we're also interested in.
A lot of Craig Rochelle, a lot of Andy Stanley, with Steve Sexton. I'll listen to your podcast, which I do want to get into that in here a little bit. But also, if I don't like it, I skip.
Oh yeah, you don't. Well, that's me too. I don't.
Yeah.
I like if a Netflix episode I start watching is bad, in the first 5 minutes I just give up on it.
Right.
Like, I don't understand. Oh, you have to go through the first season before it gets good. I'm not interested. And like time to me, there are 2 currencies. It's money and time. Time is a currency for me that I don't want to waste, because it's actually more valuable than money, because I can't get it back.
That's right.
And so I want to spend that wisely. But even if someone doesn't know what they're interested, we're talking leadership and money. And that doesn't have to, maybe you're a high school student. If you're interested in football, just start learning about football.
Right.
It doesn't have to be some, I guess, grown-up, so to speak, concept. Just start learning about something.
Right.
And that is going to develop you as a student overall. And I think you just learn good habits from feeding yourself with podcasts or, watching film if you're a sports player, things like that. Grow in some sort of way that is where you are challenging yourself. It's not someone else challenging you. You're leading yourself.
I know Tyler does that. Tyler's a big tech guy. He's always showing me I was watching this podcast. I was like, and then he'll show it to me, and I'm like, oh, Lord, I could never do that. But he loves it. But that's what you're saying. For me, my biggest regret growing up was I played sports, and I was decent at it, but I didn't really study them. I know baseball so well now. I'm getting back into tennis. So November, got on a tennis team, started at the athletic club, do a regular Monday night, then I do a tennis team, and it's the 40 and over group. It's cool because I've reset. It's like I'm back in high school again because I'm the youngest.
Right.
Most athletic. I love it.
You're the
absolutely
freshman,
love it.
but you're the most athletic.
I'm the freshman, but I'm the most I'm the most athletic, and it's the cool. 40 is the new reset. I like it. But I'm studying tennis. I went from coaching basketball and following all these different basketball people on Instagram. I removed all of it, right? All the drills, all of this of basketball. I'm like, that's gone. Now I'm in tennis. Now I follow all these pros, all these teaching, and I'm saving all these different things, and I'm going and working on it. And that's my biggest regret is I didn't really learn and give myself, and maybe it's because I didn't have these resources. It would have been tougher, right? I would have had to have gotten around people because there wasn't these on-demand YouTube videos. And so whether it's leadership, whether it's money, whether it's sports, whether it's, tech, music, oh my gosh, to be a musician today and to have all these resources, it's, I tried to learn the guitar and I would have to be annoying to people to learn the guitar. Hey, play this with me. And they were so annoyed by me. But now you can learn on your own.
Yeah, and to give an example, I would say I am less, I want to be careful. I'm less of an athlete than I've ever been.
Sure, me too.
Compared to high school. I'm less of an athlete than I've ever been, but I'm probably a better basketball player than I've ever been.
100%.
If I'm in shape and can get up and down the court. If you put me in one possession, I can
outsmart you.
Yeah, I can just outsmart you. I can know, hey, we should be just attacking this mismatch with this action, or if we want to create this mismatch, this is the action we need to do to get into that. Mm-hmm. And so, but that's just because for 5 years, I was hardcore into learning everything I could about basketball, just to kind of give a silly example. So, that's what I was feeding myself at that point. But yeah, it kind of all starts to translate when you start learning something and you start leading yourself. It'll start to translate to other areas too, and you'll set yourself apart.
I love that. It's so fun. Let's transition a little bit into what you're doing now. I know you've got a little bit into real estate. Tell us a little bit about your podcast. Yeah. And I know it's what you're going to be talking about this weekend with our leaders, and I love that you have such a passion for this. So tell us a little bit about your podcast and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so what I'm doing currently, the old W-2 job right now is an insurance agent. So that's what I do, but I got a lot of side hustles going on. So my brother and I, we're partnered in Airbnb, so we have 18 units, or about to close on 8 more units right here. 18 units of our own, and then I'm big into real estate, what's called syndications. And so I'm a partner in 104 units and another 127 units, and then we actually just got 54 more units under contract. And so that's what I've become big into. That's become my niche, that real estate model. And as I learn it, I just want to teach other people. And it's probably been a 5-year learning journey overall. And so that's why I really started to do the podcast. My podcast is called Money Vision You. And and so its tagline is the financial class you should have had in high school.
I love it.
And so it helps me, while I'm doing insurance, while I'm doing real estate, whatever it is, it helps me kind of fill that teacher niche that's just inside of me, and I just got to be teaching something, whether it's coaching basketball or teaching finances. And constantly, I'll be on LinkedIn and people will be like, oh, this and that should be taught in high school or whatever it is. And that's what my podcast is ultimately for. And even my last year teaching, I was able to start to develop my own curriculum for financial literacy, financial education. And so that's what my podcast is all about, teaching. Episode 50 just dropped this past week. And so it'll almost have been a full year of doing an episode every single week.
Wow.
And so it's got a mixture of guests. It's got a mixture of me just teaching 1, 2, 3s about something, whether it's the 5 different types of assets or 5 different ways you make money from real estate. What is escrow? It's the basic stuff too, that it is aimed at 16 to 24 years of age young people that, to me, just need to know financial literacy. To me, the world would be a lot better if we had a lot more financially literate people.
100%. But for some reason, education has removed some of these practical type classes. I'm going back to this soft skills things that people are graduating from school, and there are studies, there's articles that say that businesses, leaders are demanding that these new people into the market, these new employees have these skills, and schools aren't teaching them. Mm-hmm. And they're paying high for them, but same thing with money knowledge. I mean, it's just, it's practical skills that, I don't know, it's weird.
Well, one problem I would say is a lot of the teachers don't know it themselves.
Okay.
95% of people coming out of college don't even know what a financial statement is. They don't know the difference between an asset and a liability. And until you know the difference,
that's not good.
Yeah, until you know the difference between an asset and a liability, you're never going to become financially free.
Right.
And so, for me, I tell people on my podcast, whenever we start getting financial literacy inside of high schools, whether that is it being its own subject that is a core subject,
should be,
or intertwined as inside of every single core subject, then once we get that, then I'll stop doing my podcast, and maybe I'll be the one that creates the financial curriculum. Because to me, so when I was a teacher, the worst question to hear as a teacher is, when am I ever going to use this?
That's right.
That's the worst question to ever hear as a teacher. But you know what? What I started to realize is they have a point. They're not wrong.
That's right.
These C students, as we want to call, or unmotivated students, they just want to know something's going to be practical. And these are the people that often end up becoming the entrepreneurs. C students often end up leading the A students, because A students, because of our system, just really what they've been trained to do is be robots of the system.
They're a good robot. They're the best robots.
They're really good at filling in the blank, at multiple choice. And so those people become our high income earners, which is great. We need the doctors, we need the lawyers, but we need, going back to financial literacy, we need that intertwined in every course. Because what if inside of math you taught how to break down a real estate deal? Or what if you taught in math the problem of getting that amount of credit card debt and how that adds up, and how to even calculate that interest rate that they're saying 30% APR, interest rate. What does that even mean? A lot of them is like, oh, I don't even know. Or what if we read Rich Dad, Poor Dad in English class and did a report on that instead of some Shakespeare book? Okay, Shakespeare, I'm sure there's a need for it. I haven't used it outside of high school. And for me, I am very practical in what I want to teach. I want to teach you something that you will learn from. And so if we need to learn to read and write, okay, cool. Let's intertwine Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Or if we're wanting to learn history, how about we spend more time focusing on what happened when Richard Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard in 1971? Well, that created what is called a fiat currency. So now we have this thing called inflation that is out the wazoo right now, that is the silent thief of your money, that is really a government tax, if you want to call it, because who's printing the money? It's the government. And so when they start to have this thing called inflation, it's just a tax on your money that you don't see. And so what if we started to teach those things in school? How many times would you start to be asked the question, when am I ever going to use this? And so
you're saying inflation affects all of us?
In particular, the middle class and the poor class. As a matter of fact,
it affects everybody. It does, but who hits it the most?
But in reality, the wealthy get wealthier because their money are inside of assets. So for me,
good point.
One of my favorite things about real estate is it actually benefits from inflation, because you have fixed interest rates.
Absolutely.
So interest rate on my house, 2.99%.
Right.
Now, your home is not necessarily an asset. I've created my home to be an asset now because of house hack, and I Airbnb one room out of my house. But even if it's not technically an asset in the sense that it's putting money into my pocket, I am still borrowing money less than it is being inflated. And so that's one reason I love real estate. To go on top of that, with that in real estate, where your debt is basically becoming a smaller and smaller amount based on what the value of the U.S. dollar is becoming, on top of that, you are able to raise your rents. You are able to increase the amount of income and revenue that you are bringing in and sell that property at a higher price. And so in reality, inflation, it really helps the wealthy get wealthier. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people don't realize that the middle class and the poor, the poor class just suffer as much as they always have. It hits them the hardest. And so inflation tangent, but just another reason that I love real estate. So
personally, I think when it comes to economics, when it comes to personal finance, I don't know if we've tried to scare people off, like if some people have tried to scare people off on purpose. But, I always think of economics as boring, and it's not. Because the more I learn about economics, the more fun and easy it is. Mm-hmm. And then the same with personal finance. It's like, I can't do a budget. That's impossible. You can't know that number. It seems like so much work, and it's really not that much work. But I think we've been scared off by maybe people who don't want us to know some of this stuff.
100% agree. I do think we have a lot of financial illiteracy, even really high up. I'm not...
You're not slamming anybody.
I'm not slamming anyone. This is the fact is that when people talk about taxing the rich, as Robert Kiyosaki always says, you can't tax the rich. Why? Because their money isn't coming from an income. Their money is tied up in assets. So, for example, their money is tied up in real estate, or like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. Their net worth is tied up into it's not illiquid. It is not liquid. It is illiquid. It is tied up into the stock market. That is where they're getting their net worth from now. And so then you have Elizabeth Warren attacking Elon Musk for not paying taxes. He's got nothing, like it's all tied up.
Right.
So then when he finally did liquidate some this past year, he paid $11 billion, that's with a B, $11 billion in taxes, the most that anyone had ever paid in taxes in U.S. history.
Wow. It
was kind of funny, the tweet he sent. He said, don't use it all at once. Oops, you already did. That's hard not to laugh at. But we have, to me, that's, I'm not trying to bash anyone. That's just financial illiteracy.
That's right.
And going back to the two real reasons why I have learned to really like teaching financial literacy, outside of just I like to teach and educate, the two reasons, one is I think financial freedom that it creates better philanthropists, better leaders, better families, because ultimately, when you're financially free, you don't rely on a job for income. You have money coming passively from your assets that you're invested in, and so now your time is literally whatever you want it to be, and then you just multiply your money. The second reason I think it's so important to teach financial literacy is because, like you said, it empowers people. Right now, we have a lot of people complaining at the rich, like, for example, when Donald Trump paid minimal in taxes. The guy can be a jerk sometimes, 100% get it. But a lot of people don't sit back and realize what he did was actually completely legal. It was simply through cost segregation and bonus depreciation that he was able to pay very little in taxes from his real estate. So rather than having people ask how he did that, people just complain. Well, that's because they're not empowered because they have no financial literacy. Mm-hmm. So once you start to become financially literate, you start to see it when you have capitalism, which is, to me, if you want to teach why we should do capitalism, you have to first teach them financial literacy because people are selfish. Because once they start to learn that they can make a lot of money when they become financially literate, the world is their oyster. Like they see so many business opportunities and they don't try bad business ideas. They now have good business ideas because they know the difference and the profit margins, income versus expenses, and how much cash flow margin they're actually getting. And so I think financial literacy actually empowers people, and you start to have a lot less complainers And just to keep going on my tangent here, we have the American dream that originally was to be able to build and grow whatever you wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And that's what my family did. They came up from Italy, and they were able to build and grow whatever businesses they want to, created wealth to pass down from generation to generation. So when you have that as the forefront and people recognizing that you can do that with capitalism, they start to complain less. However, the American dream has now shifted to not me being able to figure out how to take care of myself and rely less on others because I can go build and grow whatever financially, but how can the government give more and more to me? And that is what kind of our American dream,
right?
That is not a dream to me, because it's, every time you rely more on others, you're taking away more freedom from yourself. And so that is what the American dream has shifted to. But I think if these people can get a grasp on financial literacy, they will start to see an alternative method, and we'll have less people being, oh yeah, we should do all these socialist concepts, and understand the freedom that capitalism can provide for you.
Which is a great concept. It just doesn't last very long. That's the only problem, is because eventually you run out of other people's money.
I don't know a country where it's...
Well, eventually you run out of other people's money, and actually eventually it's really quick.
And socialism only creates a poor class. You don't have an option to become a wealthy class.
Right.
You only end up having one class of people, and it's not a wealthy class. Not everyone can be wealthy. It ends up just being one poor class.
One of the things I've heard from COVID is that it seems like we're moving a little more into small businesses. And I think there's never been a greater time today than to start your own business and to start your own side hustle, as you call it. But I think we're going to start seeing more small things pop up, because the big box stores or what have you. I don't know if it's because of the rules or because of whatever, but I just think there's going to be a lot more competition where people, and I think the internet allows for that. You can sell stuff on Instagram. You're seeing more, and especially the Gen Z. They're buying less big name brand stuff, Gen Z, and they're getting more into this random T-shirt company over here or Goodwill or whatever. And because of Instagram, because of this, you don't have to have some store somewhere. Foot traffic is social media. I'm starting to see things like even small farms, right, where you're getting just somebody who has just a few cows, and then they're going to sell it to people locally. Is that anything that you've seen in the market? That's kind of some of the stuff I've been hearing.
Yeah. Well, like we said earlier, you can learn anything you want to with a phone. If you have a phone and internet, you can learn anything you want to. And I actually think we do have a younger generation coming up that is going to shock a lot of people with, not everyone, but what they are able to do with business or with real estate, or how they're able to grow themselves financially because of what the good that can come from social media and what that can provide, whether they're watching TikTok videos all day or Instagram stories, whatever it is. There's a lot of different ways to be able to get started, really with a very small amount of money. If you have a credit card, you can get a lot of different businesses that you want started. Now, don't try to go do multiple businesses. Just start with one to figure that out, try to let that grow. But yeah, definitely people are able to start small and with not a lot of money. And that, to me, is the American dream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know Mike is doing that with his cows. He's got a few cows, and I think he's trying to figure out how to go literally from his farm to someone's table and not go through the big system. I think we're allowing people to do that. I know my son has bought 3 horses in the past year and is training them and doing. He's 14 years old, and he's loving this, figuring out how much is the hay and how much is the food. And I think there's no better education than for him to learn how to do that. He's bought and sold a 4-wheeler, and he's done some things like that with his own money. That's great for him.
Yeah, and so Eli, I'm not sure how educational of a person he was when he was in school.
Right.
But all that stuff is educational, that, you teach them how to make money from doing XYZ financially, and you just teach that in a math sort of way. Now it becomes interesting.
That's right.
And just intertwining that financial education inside of those things can make someone who may generally not care. Knowing Eli, he probably didn't care as much. He probably bucked. And Eli's definitely a smart kid. So, if if he had homework, he could do it 5 minutes before and get by and figure it out. But, he would be able to use some of these skills and, be able to be more interested in whatever is being taught if you start intertwining financial education, which I know he's, homeschooled now, but to me, that is the best type of schooling. I mean, learning to be a businessman more or less in 9th grade, 10th grade, whatever age he is now, that is stuff that has multiple skills inside of it that is going to be able to be used and translate. And who knows, if he does horses 5 years from now, it could be a totally different business, but that would translate.
Yeah, I know something, just to kind of bring this back to leadership. I know something that we talked about a lot is, don't complain about what you should be leading. I know that's a big concept that we talk about at camp. Don't complain about your junior counselors, lead them. Don't complain about your campers, lead them. If you're a leader, there should be no complaining, only leadership. And I do feel like today we do have a little bit of a mindset to bring this to the economic side and the personal finance is we want to complain about maybe the amount that we're making instead of using these podcasts, using these tools we have to make ourselves better, because there is a soft skills, just deficit in our economy. In our world, where if people would just better themselves, whether it's leadership, whether it's attitude, whatever it might be, and that people will be throwing money at them, but there is this mentality that, I just rather complain about where I'm sitting in life instead of leading my life better. And I know it's a big Brookhill concept we talk about, but I think it marries into the economics.
Yeah, and I say the synonym to money is value. So if you want to learn how to make more money, all you have to do is replace the word money with the word value. So by saying, I want to make more money, you need to be saying, I want to add more value. Because when you start to do that, whether it's through a job or entrepreneurship, that is when you will start to make more money. And so money and value are completely synonymous and tied to one another. And so yeah, this definitely translates. So, don't complain about what you lead. That's what I kind of try to do with the financial education process or podcast is, we need it. And so whoever listens to it, come and do it. It's there for you. It's not like it's getting 1 million downloads each month or anything like that. But people do come listen to it and they learn from it. But those people have started to lead themselves and stopped complaining about what their system is around them. And I think the younger that people are and can learn that, the better it is, because unfortunately the typical life for someone is you go to school. If you're doing well, you go to college, you get a job, retire when you're 60. Okay? For me, I don't want to retire when I'm 60.
Sure.
I want to retire in 2 years. And I say retire, I really mean financially free. I'll never retire and stop working.
That's right.
I want to be financially free in the fact that I can do literally whatever I want to with my time.
Right.
And so I think the earlier you are in that process, the less almost poisoned you have been by the system. Mm-hmm. Because I just had a podcast with a guy who is 25 years old and he's financially free, netting well over probably $10,000 a month, getting $50,000 in revenue per month from his cleaning business. And he talks about, he started in the rat race of, going to school, did well in school, went to college, graduated college, 21, was an engineer. And then his first couple of weeks, he was like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life, because he looked around and people are working until they're 8 o'clock and they got kids. He's like, that's not what I want to do. But when he started talking to people about what he was learning within real estate and becoming financially free and how to become wealthy, the older the people that he talked to, the less they thought that was a possibility. And so I think there's a little bit of poison, more or less, from the system of, you've been in it for 20 years. I just got to stick it out 20 more years. And, there's other things that you can do. And so that's why I think the younger that people are, the more ambitious they are, that they can do that. So So yeah, that's what I've learned. But he had a lot of really good stuff that he was talking about from that podcast of, the age difference of being able to learn and get yourself kind of out of that thinking process.
I do know growing up, one of the thoughts I think that was hammered into me, and you think about it, if you're in high school, if you're in college, what's the question that everyone is asking you? It's, what are you going to do? Mm-hmm. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You become focused on the what, on what you're going to do. And I think it is way more important of who you're going to be. Mm-hmm. Like those skills that you are building, character skills, that work ethic, the knowledge that, I think it's way more important that we build the who, because I think the who takes care of the what.
Yeah, I definitely think that's important for sure. You got to lead yourself first.
That's right.
I also think it's important for people to understand that college is not the only way maybe to wealth or to a good job. There are other avenues that you can take outside of high school, because like you said, the question generally as an 18-year-old is, where are you going to college? What are you going to major in? Mm-hmm. Okay. And so that almost restricts your possibilities and of what you actually think that you are able to do. Mm-hmm. Because when you are saying that you're going to go to college and get a job, that just means you're working for somebody else. And that's okay. A lot of people want to do, so for me, if I had a 16-year-old kid, I would be trying to present to them all of the different opportunities. Now, if they want to be a doctor and lawyer, you got to go to college.
100%.
If you want to be a business person, there may be, specific things. If you want to do accounting or whatever it is, you like numbers, you need to go to college. But there are some things, dude, college isn't for you. You are much better working with your hands, and you'd be a great electrician. And I'll tell you, electricians, they make bank. All these people.
Supply and demand.
Oh, yeah.
There's not that many of them.
We do real estate projects. Those people drive up in nice cars.
That's right.
And they make bank. Right. And they have nonstop work. And if they wanted to, they could create a business out of that simply by hiring someone else to do their job, and then they keep a margin.
That's right.
And so all these different trades, maybe it's a trade that they want to do. Maybe they want to learn real estate. I had a kid on my podcast. He bought his first duplex when he was 17 years old. And now he has 8 units. He's 18 years old. He's skipping college. He's not doing college. And he would tell you he was he told me he just slept through the ACT. He just filled out all B's, slept through the ACT. He had no vision of what he wanted to do.
Sure.
But now he's 18. He's making money from his rentals. He's managing them. He's multiplying his wealth. He's multiplying his rental properties. And he was a terrible student in high school, but now he's saying, I actually kind of do want to go to college. And
right.
So, but that is an alternative path that is totally okay. Mm-hmm. But that spawned out of a vision too. It wasn't force feeding something down someone's mouth. And so I think understanding that there are different because if you want to get into real estate, you're going to have to pay tuition. And so whether that's a down payment for it or your heirs, well, you got to pay thousands of dollars for tuition to a college too. So that's what I always try to teach people. If you want to get into real estate, you got $20,000 for tuition, because all right, it's tuition. If you make a mistake, that's just tuition. It's not a failure that you can never get into real estate, that it's just not for you. No, you just paid tuition. And so there's a lot of different things that you can get into after high school. And so I think when we only tell people, what are you going to do when you get to college, that restricts people's thinking of, I can only do one of the major options. It's like, what if there's more activities that you can do at the summer camp, and I'm only showing you 5 activities? Well, there's actually 5 more that you could do as well. And so I think a lot of people, that's just the natural, I guess, progression that we think we have to be on. And there's just other options.
Man, that is so good. So good. Man, Stuart Berryhill, your podcast is called
Money Vision U.
Money Vision U. People have got to check it out. We wanted to have you on the podcast. Stuart is a lifer. He's a Brookhill legacy guy, incredible leader. Man, I appreciate having you on today. We're definitely probably going to have you back on, talk more about money. But, man, we appreciate you, Stu. Fun time hanging out today, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.